Well, let's move on. Just a short time ago, the British Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, began addressing the House of Commons, outlining the largest cuts in government spending since the Second World War. Average cuts to departmental budgets of about 25% are widely expected. Some reports have estimated up to 500,000 public service jobs may go. Now, to bring us up to date, we're joined in our London studio by our Europe correspondent, Emma Alberici. Thanks for being there, Emma. And I think Osborne's been underway for about a half an hour now. What's he managed to announce thus far?
Well, you provided a little bit of context there, but I guess the most important thing to consider as a backdrop against these cuts is the fact that they are trying to completely eradicate the single biggest structural deficit in Europe of the equivalent of 250 billion Australian dollars. They want to get rid of that entirely by 2015. Now, George Osborne did confirm that 490,000 public sector jobs will go, in his words, over 4 years, not overnight. But some of the other things that were also widely expected were quite massive cuts to university funding, to the police force, to the Foreign Office, where they have made a point to say diplomats overseas won't be cut, but those in Whitehall certainly will. And on that point, every single government department is going to face cuts in their administration budgets, so that's back office staff, of a third. So about 33% of the administrative costs across all departments will be cut. There were two departments that it's been widely known would not face any cuts at all, and they are the Health Service and the Foreign Aid budget, which was confirmed today at about 0.7% of gross domestic product. But widely speaking, they were the headline figures that have been announced, and the retirement age, of course, to lift from the current 60 to 65 up to 66 years old, and that's a decade earlier than was otherwise expected to have come into play. And also police numbers to be slashed. So across the board, it looks like no one's going to escape the pain, pretty much.
What sort of reaction are we expecting in Britain? I mean, these cuts were expected, as you say, but are the unions going to react? I mean, are we going to see, for example, the same sort of protests in the streets that we've been seeing in France?
Yes, well, as you say, the 3.5 million workers in France taking to the streets to object against austerity measures there. We certainly haven't seen anything like that here. Yesterday, as a preemptive strike, if you like, the unions did lobby outside Parliament, but you really only saw a couple of thousand people waving flags. It was a very sombre affair. We don't know exactly how the unions might react, given they have known a lot of this was coming. The political game that's being played here has been very clever on the part of the Conservatives and this coalition of the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. They've been very careful to say that these are unavoidable cuts and an unavoidable consequence of 13 years of Labor profligacy. And generally speaking, the public have taken that as a given. There's a poll released today, a YouGov poll, which shows that 18% of the public blame these cuts on the coalition, whereas 48% blame them on Labor. So the political game being played out here is clever and it's working, and so the idea of people taking to the streets here is probably less likely because they have taken it as inevitable that these were coming and that there was nothing much they could do about them, that reducing the deficit is really quite a priority. One of the things George Osborne said right at the beginning of his speech was that at the moment Britain is paying £120 million, that's about 190 million Australian dollars a day in interest payments on its debt, and that is the whole, that in some respects provides a whole context to what needs to be done here and needs to be done urgently to reduce that, if nothing else, just to reduce what they're spending on their interest charges.
Thanks very much, Emma. We're out of time. We thank you for that detailed summary and a huge story. We'll hear much more about that tomorrow. Thanks for being there.